right, so starting off with squat. Coming into this, I already knew that I was going to pretty much just blow my previous PR out of the water. Other than just a huge increase in form, the two biggest drivers of that have been me switching to low bar and me using knee sleeves, which combined would give a pretty significant increase to your max. Another thing I want to give credit to is front squats. I think they've actually helped a lot with just keeping myself stable and also smoothing out my sticking point. Because I noticed when I was doing the PR, so originally I thought it was just because the weights weren't really that heavy, so it wasn't really flaring up. But even with 365, the transition out of the hole was just so much smoother. And I think that was mostly thanks to the depth with front squats, since I go a good amount lower than with my normal back squats. So my hips are opening up a lot more and I'm getting a deeper stretch in my adductors. So when it comes time for me to do my normal squats and when I go all the way down, they already know the drill. Something else that I noticed with my warm-ups is that they got progressively harder. Like the hardest squat of the day was the last warm-up with 345 for 4. And I do want to go into this a little bit more for deadlifts, so I'm not going to spoil too much, but I think that it was pretty much my brain subconsciously preparing myself for the top set, because the worst part of the day was the time in between my last warm-up and set. It really felt like I had lost something and I couldn't explain it. It was like all of my nerves had just shut down and I was pretty much just running on fumes. But that's going to be it for squat. Let's get in the bench. So like I was saying the other day, I am actually proud of this lift, and not because I still technically got a PR, which I did. 265 for 4 would be 295, which is a 15-pound PR. But because I learned something that I think is going to be very big, not just for the bench press, but for all of my lifts. First thing I want to go over is I think that I got calmness and confidence mixed up. Because one, there's no way that I'm going to be able to be calm while going for a max attempt. And two, I need to be on edge in order to get myself to actually complete the hardest part of the lift. I also noticed that I just could not get rid of my nerves while benching like I could with the squat and the deadlift, because at least for right now, in order to do that, I need to use my adrenaline to pretty much just bring out like a primal thing. And I say confidence because I noticed that more and more, getting closer to the 4th week, I just did not know where to put my feet. And it's not because like I just forgot, it was because I needed to know exactly where to put them, because I put so much stake in form while I bench, and I don't really put that much in just my strength, so I don't really have the confidence that I'm going to be able to push through even if something is a little bit off. So I try to apply that for arm day, and I think one big thing that I noticed was the focus. And it wasn't like a calm focus, but it was like I was hunting. I think that would be the best way to describe it, because I was hunting for that little feeling I get on the inside of my foot when I know I'm in the best position for leg drive. And I'm very confident that I am correct in my statement because of the similarity between that and when I set up my deadlift. I'm not sure if I kept that part in for the other video. It'll definitely be in for today. So either way, you'll be able to see what I was talking about. Another thing that I wanted to focus on was stability, because even though the bench press isn't a full body movement, at the same time, it is a full body movement, because you're pretty much doing the same thing with your legs that you are with your arms. You lower the weight, you make sure everything's stable, and then you push when the time comes. So something I want to focus a little bit more on is the use of my legs, mainly in the lowering part of the lift. I want to keep them tight, pretty much. So I lower the bar and I activate my quads without actually pushing them, so that I can keep my body stable. And then when it's time to push, I push with all of my strength with both my arms and with my legs. Because what I normally do is when I lower the bar, I pretty much just let my legs go numb. And my thought process with that was to have a bigger drive. Because if when the bar touched my chest, my legs went back further, I'd have some more space to use my legs. But something, I was watching a Brendan Teach video and it said that he used stability with his bench press. And I didn't really understand. Well, I thought that I understood, but in reality, I hadn't given it much thought past what he said, because he was talking about he didn't really use a lot of force when he was benching and he focused a lot more on stability. And I think it's because the main goal of leg drive is not to get you some extra movement on the bar. That is, of course, one way to use it, but the main goal is to create a base off of which your arms can generate power from. And I think one way I might want to think about it is, instead of pushing the bar up, you're pushing the bar away from yourself, because you're driving your, I don't really know all the fancy lingo for like all the different parts of the body, but I think it's the scapula. You're driving your shoulders into the bench so that your stabilizers don't have to do as much work and you can focus on producing as much force as possible. But I think that's going to be it for bench. Let's get into deadlifts. All right, so I could only find one that was recorded in portrait, so I had to zoom in a lot. It doesn't look like much, but it's actually very helpful in terms of leg drive, because before my hips were shooting back a little bit too early and I wasn't really able to get as much as I could out of my hip hinge. So that very small change was actually a very big helper. And also doing it, I actually figured out what people were talking about with the like act like it's a leg press and push the ground away from you. And it made me think a lot about something completely unrelated, which is people who know what they're talking about saying something versus people who heard something from the people who know what they were talking about. Because before I started powerlifting, I was being trained. I'm doing air quotes right now because he sucked and had no idea what he was doing. But I didn't know that because I had less of an idea what I was doing. And he would always tell me to act like I was pushing the ground away from me. And I really didn't get it. And I think the reason why I didn't understand what he was talking about is because there were so many things with my form that hadn't been brought up yet, to where I wasn't able to implement that cue into my setup. And I think that's something a lot of, if not most, mediocre to low level trainers and coaches do with their clients. Because, I heard Julius Maddox said bend the bar, so I'm going to tell that to literally everybody I train, even though they have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. And it honestly kind of annoys me that people just really don't try to have a deeper understanding of those things. Because I mean, if you're just a weekend warrior and you're just going to the gym to not be out of shape, then of course do whatever you want to do. But if it's your job to get people in shape and to have them be able to achieve whatever fitness goals they may have, you need to know what you're talking about. And you need to know why you're saying what you're saying. You shouldn't just say words without knowing what they actually mean. And going a little bit more into what I was saying earlier with the last warm up being the hardest part of the day, the time in between my top set and my last warm up felt like everything was just being compressed. Like when you pop some Mentos into a soda bottle and then it starts like fizzing up and stuff, and then eventually it explodes. That's pretty much how it felt when I was walking up to the bar. So luckily this time I remember my chalk. It would probably been not good if I forgot my chalk that time. But when I grabbed my chalk bag, like I could just feel the lid being removed and everything was starting to bubble up. And when I stepped up to the bar and I was getting myself hyped up, it exploded to when I eventually started pulling. Like everything was just like that. I don't know if you could hear, but I just snapped. And I just think it's pretty cool how my body just knew what I was trying to do and I guess created that reaction just because I was so nervous and I was actively feeding in to those nerves to where when it was time, I would have had attached the feeling of failure to the fear of death. Like when Eddie Hall was trying to go for his deadlift world record and he literally got hypnotized into thinking that he was lifting a car off of his children. I also want to say just right now that that is definitely not something that I want to use regularly. Just because I really don't think that my body's going to be able to withstand me using 150% of my strength more than like once a month. And so about the total, this is the chart that I used all last month, and I feel that it was actually pretty helpful and accurate. I tested it out with a couple of my previous rep PRs and a couple of my 1 rep maxes just to see if it was actually accurate, and everything seemed to work out fine. So this is what I'm going to be using from now until the foreseeable future. And this is how I got the 1054 for 5 and the 1212 for 1. But that's pretty much it. In 7 days, we're going to be starting 3s and 2s and 3s, mostly 3s are what I'm most excited for, just because I've never done anything for that amount of reps. But yeah, I'll see you next time.